Technology in the marine sector is moving rapidly and there are huge changes taking place. Two of the key issues are the concept of remote operation and also fully autonomous vessels. The initial policy question was, how do we ensure these new ships can operate safely amongst conventional shipping? Once we'd identified where there were barriers in regulations that we needed to address, we then discussed how we could test policies to address those barriers. And one of the methods MARlab suggested was serious gaming.
So when we talk about serious games, it's about using game mechanics to get people thinking in a really different way about what they want the future to be like. Having a game mechanic is really useful because it allows people to really engage into that complexity in a way that is not too overwhelming. The way that a lot of maritime regulations work is quite context-driven, and so a scenario-based game felt really right for us. What we hoped to do was to take these officials and these stakeholders on a bit of a journey, as if they were on an autonomous ship, understand what they might need, whether the regulations made sense, and whether they can even try and break the regulations.
The traditional method of very formal interactions through workshops or through consultation historically has created a very formal back and forward between industry and the regulator. I think what the workshop provided was a very informal approach. So whereas perhaps you'd get very closed loop yes or no questions and answers, we were getting a lot more conversation. And I think that dialogue actually is far more beneficial from a policy perspective.
The stakeholders we normally deal with, they come from the shipping industry, they're maritime focused. What we were beginning to be aware of is that with remotely operated vessels and autonomous vessels, they were coming from startups, from people that were not our traditional stakeholders. Having worked with MARlab previously, I was aware of the different techniques and the different tools that MARlab used to engage stakeholders, getting people to think differently and have a conversation differently.
As part of MARlab, we used speculative design as a means to engage a wider stakeholder group around marine autonomy. We took a number of different scenarios around what kind of future situations might arise from having autonomous vessels, and we tried to reimagine them as signal flags. We showcased these flags in an exhibition. It was a way to open up that conversation about marine autonomy with a group of stakeholders who might not necessarily have been open to that. Speculative design and serious games can work with policy development as part of a wider process. It's a way to supplement those traditional data points and sources of information with something that's a bit more playful, that's a bit more creative and really engages people.
The serious gaming workshop and the flags that were prepared, for me, highlights that we're being progressive. It allows us to prove to industry that we look at new ways of regulating. In the past, it's been much more the regulator decides, industry follows. Whereas now it's much more collaborative, and I think the MARlab and MARlab work has helped enable that.
Engaging with the different methods that MARlab use will push you outside your comfort zone, but it does really provide value and depth to your development of policy in the end. For me, I can see how we can adapt what we did for anything we develop, whether it's autonomous ships, whether it's pollution related, whether it's seafarer related, and the same can be applied to other industries.